Yes, hello, welcome back to the Rugby League Forecast podcast. This is the review show for round 12. Now, normally the review shows go for around 50 minutes to an hour. Obviously, with the five games this week, this episode certainly won't be as long. But let's review the first game of round 12, which was Thursday night last week between the Canberra Raiders and the Dolphins at GIO Stadium. Look, I'll start off with the Canberra Raiders here. Disappointing. They were favourites to win this game. No Herbie Farnworth. Of course, Sebastian Chris actually got ruled out during the warm-up, which didn't help Canberra at all. But, man, I mean, you look at the players that were missing for the Dolphins. No Herbie, no Hammer. Cody Nikorima didn't play. Brad Schneider played at 5'8". They had a fair few players out. Tommy Gilbert, Max Plath. Um, Canberra at home, I genuinely believe this time last year, Canberra win this game and win it well. I'm starting to believe, and I'm not just saying this because I'm a diehard Manly fan, I'm starting to believe that as good as Ethan Sanders is progressing as a young halfback. As good as he is progressing, I'm starting to really genuinely believe that they are really missing the experience, the kicking game, and the direction from Jamal Fogarty. Because we see what he's doing at Manly now, and he is directing Manly around very nicely. And as good as Ethan Sanders is, I genuinely believe that that they are missing experience in key positions. Now, KO Weeks is the exception. Now, mind you, he made his debut back in 2022, so this is his fifth season in the NRL. He's been around now for a little bit, but still relatively young. Just in key positions. I mean, Ethan Strange was out in this game. So, yeah, look, Dane Laurie played at 5'8". Jed Stewart on the wing. They're still missing big Papali'i up front. Look, overall, I'm just disappointed from Canberra. At the start of the year, I didn't believe Canberra would make the eight. And I'm starting to think that perhaps I might be right with that one. I don't get all the predictions right, trust me. But with this one, I'm starting to think that if Canberra were a dead set fair dinkum team of doing anything in this competition, making the eight and making their way into the finals, I genuinely believe this is a game they had to win. I understand they had no Ethan Strange, but last year they had this next man up mentality, and they don't have that this year. They're lacking experience in key positions. And I think, they're a young football team. And I was surprised with what they were able to achieve last year, considering how much youth and inexperience of National Rugby League football there was within that squad. Last year, they were unbelievable to achieve what they achieved. Even Ricky Stewart, the Canberra coach, came out last year after a press conference and said, hey, you know what? We've overachieved this year. And he did not expect them to win the minor premiership. So that's coming from their head coach. It goes to show what a tremendous job they did in 2025. But I'm starting to wonder now if that loss to the Brisbane Broncos in week 2 of the finals last year, or week 1 of the finals last year, which was by far one of the best finals games we've seen in the NRL era since 1998. For me personally, I'm wondering if it's left a lot more scars than what we thought. If they win that game, they probably go through to the grand final, I think it's fair to say. They lost in extra time, field goal by Ben Hunt. Ben Hunt. Oh, my apologies there. Oh, anyway, I'll edit that out, but I'll probably forget to. Look, um, well, stuff that one up. Um, yeah, Ben Hunt, I should say. It's like when Rab said Carmichael, you know what, back in Origin many, many years ago. The great Ray Warren was commentating, and he goes, oh, he's kicked it straight down to back. And then you hear Sterlo in the background just laughing his head off. Some of the great commentary in rugby league from Ray Rabbitsborough. Gee, I miss him. Be good if he could commentate another Origin just quietly, get to game 100. But yeah, Canberra disappointing in this game. I thought Savelio Tamale was disappointing. He's had a couple of rough games this year so far. And look, I don't want to come on this podcast and criticise players, because at the end of the day, who am I to criticise players? But at the end of the day, like, I feel like every rugby league fan should have an opinion. And where I come from with criticism is I don't want to come here and say and shoot players down. Where I come from is a place where if I say a player struggled here, it's because I know that they're one of the great players, and I really believe that criticism isn't always a bad thing. I got criticised when I played football, and I sort of learnt a lot from it. I don't think criticism is always a bad thing, and I think at the end of the day, um, Canberra, Tamale, he's got an error in him. He's got to fix them up. It's like Selwyn Cobbo at the Dolphins, right? He didn't play in this game either, but we've seen in his game, especially over the last few years, he's got an error in his game. And if these great players like Tamale, who I really rate, he's a fantastic player, a local Chroma Kingfisher Junior from where I grew up in Sydney, in Northern Beaches. I'm pretty sure he played for the Chroma Kingfishers. I think he's around 21, 22 years of age, and I can see him playing first grade up until his mid-30s. I think he's a first grader every single day of the week. And where I'm coming from is a place of I think he can be so much better if he fixes those errors. And I think he would know that too. Canberra would know that too. But if he fixes up those errors, it will save games for Canberra. They will win a lot more. And for me personally, I know he had a big long-term injury last year back in 2025 and Jed Stewart came in to replace him on the wing. But for me, I just genuinely believe that he needs to fix up those errors because he made a couple of errors that, he could have caught those bombs and that could have really changed the momentum, changed the game, changed the confidence of the Canberra side. It goes to show how important a winger is in this day and age. For the Canberra, look, I'm disappointed. If I'm a Canberra fan, I'm pretty disappointed. They can definitely still make the finals, but I'm seeing signs at the moment where they lack confidence in certain areas of the game. Defensively, I thought they were quite poor. They lack effort that was there last year. And I'm wondering, is it, they're not obviously not doing it deliberately. So does it come down to a lack of motivation, a lack of dedication because they're scarred from last year and what happened and how close they got? I'm not sure. I don't know if Ricky knows. I don't know if Canberra know, but it's something they're going to have to work out really quickly because at the end of the day, they have the potential to win the competition. When Canberra are at their best, they can win the comp. Absolutely they can. And as someone who was born in 1994, late 1994, I've never seen Canberra win the comp. I'm 31 years old now. They're one of the only teams I've never seen win the comp. And I want to see teams like the Wars, the Raiders, Parramatta. Well, Para, yeah, I'm a Manly fan, so, I could probably wait for Para a little bit to win one. But look, I feel for their fans. They've waited long enough. I want to start seeing consistency in teams that haven't won a comp in a long, long time to win. We look back at 2013 Roosters, 2014 Souths, 2015 Cowboys had never won one. Souths hadn't won one in almost 50 years. 2016 Sharks had never won one in 50 years. 2017 Melbourne, hadn't won one since 2012. But there was a 3 or 4 year period there where a new team had won every single year, and it was a team that hadn't won in a long time before. I think that's when our game was at its best in terms of fairness when it came to the salary cap. But I'd love to see Canberra win more than anyone. If Manly can't win it, I'd love to see the Raiders get up there. And I come from a fan of Canberra in a way. Like if they're on my top 3 teams, I want to see them do well, but I'm really disappointed in what I'm seeing from them at the moment. I really like it. The positives are, I love what KO Weeks is doing at fullback. He's clearly their long-term fullback there. I thought Owen Paddy did pretty well when he started. So Ricky Stewart started Owen Paddy in this game and Tommy Starling came off the bench. I like Owen Paddy. I really like him. He's obviously the future 9 of the club. He's a Queenslander, I believe. He could certainly end up being the new number 14 for Queensland in years to come off the bench for Harry Grant. Look, I think Owen Paddy did pretty well when he came on. Obviously, he hasn't played much football this year, but I really like the progression of Ethan Sanders. I love what he's doing, to be honest. I mean, you look at his game, his kicking game is getting better. He's directing the side around, not at the level of Fogarty last year, but you have to understand this is his proper first year of NRL. So the way he's developing is pretty fast paced for a young half, in my opinion. If you watch his game closely, he is really, defensively, he's been strong as well, which is, a flaw in young halves as well. He's really strong. He doesn't miss many tackles. I really like what I've seen from him. Obviously, no Ethan Strange. Simi Sasungi, you can understand the loss. He's a huge loss for me. He's been Canberra's best player this year. Joe Tarpany tried his best. At the end of the day, I still think they had a team there that could have won this game at home, and they should have won it with the amount of injury. A couple of injuries to the Dolphins and obviously key players out for Origin. Obviously, Ethan Strange was a loss, as I mentioned earlier, but this is one I expected Canberra to win. They didn't. Congratulations to the Dolphins. On the Dolphins, can I give a rap to Felice Kafusi here? There was a try in this game that it took me back to a young Felice Kafusi at the Melbourne Storm as a back rower. And that pass from Felice Kafusi, that he's got this beautiful ability and such a beautiful part of the game, which doesn't get appreciated enough, in my opinion, where a front rower or a back rower or a lock forward can take it to the line and they have this ability to hit and spin to allow themselves to have space to offload. I don't think it gets appreciated enough or spoken about enough in media in rugby league. It is such a skill and an art in rugby league for a front rower for a forward in rugby league to have the ability of hitting and spinning quickly to allow themselves to create space for an offload for second phase play. And this is what Felice Kafusi did in that try. He offloaded the ball to Morgan Knowles, and it was very great. It was a really good try. In fact, the Dolphins are one of those sides that can score points from anywhere in the field. We all know that. But for me, that was probably the best try I've seen the Dolphins score in a long, long time. Just the ability of how the forwards combined. Felice Kafusi and Morgan Knowles, the England international scoring. I'm pretty sure that was his first try in Dolphins colours. So congratulations to him. Now, what Dolphins did have in this game was that next man up mentality, which Canberra lacked this year. They had it last year. And, Jeremy Marshall-King was great. Tavita Nafahu, we saw what he was about in the preseason challenge, scoring one of the great tries in the corner. And I thought he was outstanding in this game. His kick returns were great. His defensive plays were great. I thought Jed Stewart's defense out on the edge for Canberra was a bit poor. They targeted him and his edge. I just thought the Dolphins, they rolled through and they did it quite easily. And, I know the score was 30-22 and they ended up winning this game by 8 points. But in my opinion, I thought it was a lot bigger, really. If you look at the stats, if you look at the way in which the Dolphins continually easily made meters up in the middle of the field, it was quite good to watch if you're a Dolphins fan. And they are the real deal, the Dolphins. They are definitely a side that can win the comp. It's a side I'd like to win the comp too. A side that I haven't seen and no one has seen win a comp in the NRL since they came into the competition in 2023. For me, they were really, really good. I want to give a rap to Brad Schneider as well. Now, he debuted, I'm pretty sure he played, well, I know he played at Canberra. In the first half of the 2022 season, Jamal Fogarty arrived at the Canberra Raiders, and he had an injury to his foot from memory. And Brad Schneider came in and played about 12 games at halfback for Canberra, and he did a reasonable job too for Canberra. And it was he sort of got the winning try there to seal the game in the dying minutes of the game to make it an 8-point lead, or to get up by 6 with a kick to come from right in front. I thought Brad Schneider, the way he's developed as a first grader as well, obviously spent some time in the Penrith system, which has no doubt helped develop his game. Of course, he can be a 14. He can fill in at hooker. He can fill in the halves. I just thought his defence was really good in this game as well. But that individual brilliance from his try towards the end of the game showed a lot of class, showed a lot of maturity, and showed how much his game had developed as a half as well. So great to see. Congratulations to the Dolphins. The next game, the Bulldogs 30 points to 20 over the Melbourne Storm. Now, at halftime, I won't lie, I thought this game was done and dusted. I could not see a world where the Bulldogs were going to come back, especially with the broken arm to Jacob Preston, which was really, really sad to see. Now, on the podcast last week, I reviewed the game of the Bulldogs, and I sat there and I thought, wonder what they should do. One of the things I said was I think Kurt Mann should go into dummy half. And they did that this week. And look, I wasn't trying to. I think it was an obvious thing to do, and I've got no doubt a lot of Bulldogs, a lot of people that follow the game would have been calling the same thing. For me, it was quite an obvious thing, and I'm not Einstein for calling that out, but it just he's played dummy half at Newcastle before. He's played dummy half at Melbourne before many, many years ago to fill in a couple of, off the bench, or he's played dummy half in his career. And I just thought he added a bit of spark from dummy half, just his runs, his hit ups from dummy half. It was sort of an old school dummy half role he had, but it worked. And, I think Bailey Hayward, he played really well in this game. When he came off the bench, he did really well. Sitili Tupanua combined really well there with um, Lachlan Galvin. Sorry, how could I forget his name there? Yeah, I'm really impressed with Canterbury, because a lot of those games last year they win that, and they win it in that fashion. They showed character in this game, and it was great to see, considering that it was the Canterbury Bulldogs' 2000th game in their career. It was really good to see them win this game over a depleted Melbourne Storm. Now, to be honest, I thought Melbourne were fantastic in the first half. They showed composure, maturity, patience in the way they defended, attacked, but they just lacked that experience when it mattered. I thought their missed tackles in the second half was shocking. I haven't seen Melbourne defend like that. Even we've seen the great Melbourne sides over the years without Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk, Cameron Smith due to origin duties, with Greg Inglis on the side for many, many years. And they just had that next man up mentality. And Melbourne Storm are very much reminding me of Canberra this year. They've been up there with some of the most disappointing sides so far in this competition. I believe Melbourne and Canberra can make the 8. I believe they can turn their season around, but they're really running out of time now. I mean, it's round 12. We're getting towards that halfway mark of the year. And the Melbourne Storm, I expected them to win this game, considering that they had quite a fair margin. I think it was 12 points at half time. Normally they win those games. If Melbourne are up at halftime, I reckon 90% of the games they normally win, probably higher. This year, for some reason, their second halves, they stink. They're really, really poor. What that comes down to, who knows? Their coach, Craig Bellamy, at press conferences every week they lose, sits there. He can't answer the questions. He doesn't know what it is. If it's a mental thing, physically, are they just too tired? Look, in fairness to Melbourne, they're one of the only sides that have not yet had a bye in 12 weeks of football, right? So I think they've got 3 byes coming up in the final, in the second half of the year. So for me, the Melbourne Storm will very much be looking forward to a bye. No Harry Grant, no Cameron Munster, but at the end of the day, they lost this game. I thought Suafalago was good. Will Warbrick had a bit of a shocker. Unfortunately, he didn't have one of his great games. I thought Howarth had moments defensively a bit poor. I want to give a credit to the Bulldogs, though, with the way in which they read the room well in terms of their attack, right? They read the game really well. They knew very quickly in this second half that they had to give Bronson Xerri early ball on that edge and catch out the defenders on that right edge for the Melbourne Storm. You had in the back row, you had Sean Blaw and Atavalu Lasati. They got caught out many times in this game. Lachlan Galvin did a really good job in this game. But for me, Matt Burton was Canterbury's best. The way in which he can just become he can be a centre, he can be a 5'8", but he can also be a lock forward at the same time. He plays like a fullback. He was outstanding. Jacob Carraz, please keep him at fullback. I'm not convinced they will. And to be fair, Connor Tracy had, up until a couple of weeks ago, he's been really good and been one of the most consistent players for Canterbury this year, considering their poor form. But I just think Jacob Carraz adds a lot more. I think Connor Tracy could actually be a really good winger. He played a bit of wing for Cronulla many years ago, played in the centres, can also play in the halves if they're short. He could fill in anywhere in that 6-man bench. But I think he deserves to be in the 13 somewhere. I think he could be on the wing. But I think Carraz, his size, his speed, his ability, his agility, from that fullback position, he adds so much. And I love what I saw from Jacob Carraz. That try at the end to seal the game was fantastic. And it was actually great to see Canterbury win again. First game in 6 weeks since they beat Penrith back in round 5, I think it was. So 7 weeks. Wow. Congratulations to them. They were outstanding in that second half. Started slow, but what I loved about this game too was the way they fought back. Their They're behind by 6 in the second half. Matt Burton gives away a penalty. Melbourne take the 2. It's then 20 points to 12. Normally, we've seen the Bulldogs crumble. Mentally, they think, fuck, maybe it's not our night. Maybe we can't do it. But the way they were able to turn their season around in terms of, if they lost this game, they were gone, in my opinion. They turned not only their game around, their season around, and they did it back based on that Bulldogs, dogs of war mentality. They played like a side, that 2004 side, that 2012 grand final side, that 2014 grand final side, where when they were behind on the scoreboard, they showed that Bulldogs DNA in that second half. And I think they knew they had a responsibility, not just to win this game, to win their, to save their season. But I think they had a responsibility. The way they played in the second half, it really made me think that Serrato must have had a chat to them about the history of the club and the responsibility that they had wearing that jersey tonight. It wasn't, they didn't get handed that jersey. They earned the jersey, but it's also an honour, a privilege, and a luxury to wear that Bulldogs jersey. One of the oldest clubs, you got the Roosters and the Rabbitohs, but I'm pretty sure the Bulldogs, or the Dragons, I don't know can't remember when the Dragons came in, but the Bulldogs are one of the oldest Sydney clubs. I know that. The oldest clubs in rugby league in Australia. So there's a history there, almost 100 years of history. So they had a responsibility making sure that they got the job done for all those players that have worn the jersey in the past, to represent them, for those that dug the well, such as Stephen Price in the late 90s and early 2000s, Willie Mason, Braithen Nasta, Hazemel Masri, Mark O'Mealy, all these, Brent Sherwin, all these incredible players that dug the well in those early to mid 2000s. And then you go back to the mid 90s, Terry Lamb, Dean Pay, some great Bulldogs, some great players. And I think they had a responsibility to win this game. I think they had a duty to make sure that they got out there and they did the not just the fans proud, not just their side proud, not just themselves or, each other as a team. I think they did every single player that has worn the jersey in the past. I reckon they did them proud in this game. They had a responsibility to win it. They did it, and congratulations to Canterbury. 30 points to 12 over the Melbourne Storm. The Dragons over the Wars. Now, Joey, listen up, brother. I've highlighted here, as I just told you there at footy training, the Warriors. I'm going to talk about the Wars here. I'm going to focus on the Wars. Here we go. The Warriors, well, they are a pleasure to watch. They are absolutely a pleasure to watch. I'll admit, I did a season preview at the start of the year, and here's an example, guys, of here's another prediction I get wrong. And this is what I love about rugby league. Sometimes you just got no idea. You can't pick it. For me, I thought the Warriors were going to really struggle this year. I didn't like what I saw. Not last year, in 2024. I thought the Metcalf injury was going to hurt them. How wrong was I there? I thought the Barnett injury, he wasn't back until, 3 or 4 weeks ago. I thought that was going to really hurt their form in the start of the year. But the way they're winning games, the fashion in which they are winning games at the moment are signs of a team full of confidence, but a really happy football side that believe that they can actually win the comp. And I don't think, watching many teams at the moment, I don't see confidence in round 12 apart from Penrith. I think Manly aren't playing like a team that genuinely believe. And I know this is critical, but Joey's probably listening to this. Hey, don't you fucking talk about Manly. Keep on the Wars. No, in all seriousness, the Warriors are playing like a team that genuinely believe they're winning the comp. Manly, I'll just say this, Joey, real quick. Manly are playing like a team that they're playing like one of the better sides in the competition, but I think they're focusing on week to week. I think watching the Warriors, Andrew Webster, their system, their depth, their juniors, their everything with that club is working. They look happy, and they look like a side that actually, dare I say it, can see themselves in the first weekend of October for the first time since 2011, and before that, they were there in 2002, Stacey Jones up against Freddie Fittler. I think it could be their first grand final in 15 years, 16 years. I think it's, I think there's a real chance where they can get there. They're looking like a side that can that can picture themselves there. They're playing for each other. They're playing for their people. They're playing for their fans. They're playing for the club. They're playing for their coach. And they're doing it with a smile on their face. And to be completely honest with you all, in the 17 clubs of the NRL at the moment, I can't see overly too many happy football sides because there's been a lack of consistency from most of them. And the only two consistent sides I've seen in the competition to start the first half of season 2026 is the Penrith Panthers and the New Zealand Warriors. They're the only two consistent sides. Even the Roosters, I can't say they've been consistent. Even though there was a period there where they won 5 games in a row, they got belted by the Wars back in round one, and they lost against the Cowboys when the Cowboys had players out. No Nanai, no Dearden. The Cowboys have been outstanding. I'll get to them soon, but the Warriors are just, the Cowboys have been consistent. I'll give them that. Oh, they've been very consistent. But the Wars for me and the Panthers, if you're picking a grand final right now, you're picking them two. And, I think that's obvious. I think the way they're playing. And what's really impressing me about the Warriors is not the way they're winning games, not the way they're scoring points, not the way they're doing the consistency and the simple fight. They've simplified their game ever since Andrew Webster has gotten to the club back in 2023. They have simplified the way they play. Before they had coaches like Nathan Brown and I think they became too technical, the Wars, for a 10-year period there. They have simplified their game. Andrew McFadden, I think, was a coach there for a couple of years. They're playing the way the game needs to be played. The way in which the game of rugby league has adapted, has gotten faster since 2021 onwards when the 6 again rule came in to now. Watch the 2021 NRL game with the Warriors, right? They were struggling hard. Aden Fanua-Blake had just gotten the game. There was the COVID period. You had Cody Nikorima at the club. They were really struggling. They were doing their best. Isaiah Papali'i was there. Like that, they had some good players. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was there at the time before he went over to Union. They had a good side, but they were just playing. They were improvising. There wasn't a system in place. There wasn't much structure. There was just a lack of balance in their roster, even though they had good players. But now you watch a game now and you watch the Wars and you never knew back then when the Wars would win a game. They were known back then as such an inconsistent side. I'd say from around 2012 to 2021. They made the finals a couple of times. I think in 2018 they made the finals, but they were one of the most inconsistent sides of the competition. Go watch a Wars game back in 2021 and you'll know and you'll see the way in which they're playing. It didn't suit the 6 again rule. It didn't suit the way the game was played before the 6 again rule. They played so slow, predictable, and I watch them now. They have adapted to, and one of the only clubs and teams in season 2026 that have adapted to the new rules. I like what Tane Tuapiki is doing at fullback. You look at the game now and how I'm talking about the way in which the game has changed. You're not seeing Latrell Mitchell at fullback anymore. Tommy Turbo, for me, he should be in the centres. I don't think he's a fullback anymore at this stage of his career due to his consistent injuries. You're seeing a lot of these smaller fullbacks now. Tane Tuapiki, Jai Gray. Connor Tracy has been the consistent full. He's been the fullback for the majority of weeks. He's a smaller fullback too. You're seeing a lot of these younger, lighter fullbacks at the moment due to their speed that needs to be used by their backs in the middle of the ruck when teams get exhausted, when teams get tired. You see these little guys and these little nuggets at fullback come out of nowhere and just split the line from dummy half. And you'll notice too, Kalen Ponga, he's a small fullback, and you'll notice too that the fullbacks these days, these smaller guys are better support players than those bigger fullbacks in recent years. They are always there. They're consistently always there. I really like what I'm seeing from the Warriors at the moment. I think, Luke Metcalf, I'll touch on him at the moment. I don't think you can put him back in this side. I think, put him back on the bench, that 6-man bench. I don't think you can start him at halfback anymore. For me, in my opinion, if I'm a Wars fan, Luke Metcalf hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't done a Zach Lomax and walked out on a contract. I just wish I saw him want to earn that spot back. instead of just think, oh, bugger, I've lost the spot. I better move somewhere else. I wish he sort of just dug his, you know, stomped his foot down a bit and went, no, 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 I'm going to earn this jersey. I'm going to earn the 7 jersey back at the Wars, and sort of, I wish he was sort of bought into their culture a bit more and wanted to stay and did what he could to, rather than sort of think, oh, bugger, I probably won't, take me a long time to back in the side to pack up the bags. For me, I just, I know this sounds harsh. For me, Luke Metcalf, it's probably the easy way out. Go to the Dragons where you get a lot of money and whatnot. It's easy for me to say I'm not on that coin. And look, if I'm in his position, it would be tempting. But I wish I saw it from NRL players at the moment where they could come in and just, when things don't go their way, if they could just think, you know what, maybe I just try and fight back and try and earn that position. Try hard. That's what I love about rugby league, the competitiveness, not just in the game against your opposition, but within the squad, trying to be better than the other person so you can get better as a side and better individually. I wish I saw that from Luke Metcalf a bit more. I was a bit disappointed to see that he wanted an early release to leave the Wars and join the Dragons, considering what he did for not just the on-field results last year, but what he did off the field too. In 2024 was disappointing for the Warriors. They had a really, really poor year. Then the year after, they versed Canberra in round 1 in Vegas, and the Wars are back, baby. They struggle in that game. They actually get smashed by Canberra, but there's a sense that the Wars are back. Round 2, round 3, they started slow, but then all of a sudden, round 4, round 5, round 6, Metcalf was the Dally M leader in round 17 last year. You got a sense early on in the year that when they turned it around, pretty sure it was round 2. And I think they versed the Broncos back in round 5 and they won in Golden Point with a penalty conversion. There was a sense that the Wars were back, and Luke Metcalf was a huge reason why they were back. I thought he was all in, to be honest, and it's sad to see the Wars lose Luke Metcalf, but if I'm Andrew Webster, I'd probably think, Luke, mate, to be honest, if you're not all in, you're probably not going to start. Because what I've loved from Tim Martin is he's come into this side last year. Last week, Tanner Boyd does his ACL, magic round, comes off. Martin comes on, scores a try, assists a try. He scores another try over the week against the Dragons. His ability to read the play, to know when to throw a pass, not to throw a pass. His short kicking game is very underrated, and he's very experienced too. Tim Martin. I'll rewind the clock back to 2017 for the Cowboys. Right, Jonathan Thurston does his shoulder, game 2, State of Origin, kicks the winning conversion at ANZ Stadium, Sydney Olympic Park, to win the game, to send Queensland to a decider at Suncorp Stadium for game 3. But Thurston, that's the last thing he does in that 2017 season. He kicks the conversion, his shoulder's hanging by a thread, he's holding his shoulder, and he's gone for the year. He's completely gone, right? So what happens is Michael Morgan then goes from the number 6 jersey into the 7, and it was Tim Martin that moved into the 5'8 position. He was only 21 years old or so at the time, and man, he was so underrated in 2017. He ended up being a grand finalist 5'8 of the NRL in 2017. He actually scored a try from memory in that 2017 grand final against the Melbourne Storm, and then he had a brain bleed, I believe, and he actually medically retired from the NRL. He comes back from the NRL a couple of years later under Kevin Walters at the Brisbane Broncos, and around 2022, 2020, I think it was 2022, 21, 22, and he actually played a bit of fullback in the halves a little bit. I think Albert Kelly was there at the time, and he played really good football. He added a lot of spark and attack from that fullback position when he filled in there. Then the Wars signed him, and I think he's done a terrific job as well at the Warriors since he's been there. If I'm Andrew Webster, I think, and Warriors fans, please let me know if you disagree in the comments, but for me, I think you go, you know what, Luke, I love what you've done at the club, but you want to move on. If you wanted to stay, brother, I'd probably put you at halfback now. I don't think you can, based on what Martin's done over the last couple of weeks. You put Metcalf on the 6-man bench, but you probably say to him, mate, you'll be used from time to time, but you're probably you're not going to be on consistently anymore. And I think that's fair enough. If Luke wants to leave, he can leave. But with that probably comes the responsibility and understanding of knowing that you have to earn that number 7 spot to get back into the side. And I think there needs to be an understanding and respect from Luke Metcalf's side of things as well. And I'm sure, look, he seems like a great bloke. He was at Manly for a couple of years there. I'm sure he'd understand that. I just wish I probably saw a little bit more fight in him wanting to stay at the Wars and wanting to be part of a winning culture. I think if Luke Metcalf is ever going to win a premiership in his career, I think, he's probably better off staying at the Warriors, because I can see them winning their first premiership very, very soon, probably in the next 3 to 5 years. Very much likely they could do it this year. If anyone's going to beat Penrith in a grand final, from what we've seen in the opening 12 weeks of this competition, it's going to be the Warriors. Yes, some of their attack is predictable, but at the same time, it is just as unpredictable. You do not know what you're going to get apart from consistency, which is dangerous. You don't know how they're going to attack. For example, Wade Egan on the weekend, that pass he threw from dummy half, that deception from dummy half to Timare Martin was unbelievable. The way he didn't need to dummy pump, he just stepped out, and then just the angle he passed that football on to hit the chest of Martin, who was flying on it. It was just such experience from Wade Egan, who's been in the NRL now for many, many years. And when you talk about the elite hookers of this competition, you're going to talk about Reece Robson, Harry Grant, Reid Marnie, the better hookers of the comp. Wade Egan is up there in the top 4 or 5 hookers of this competition. Without a doubt, he is not just defensively great, the way in which he can get his forwards just rolling onto the football. His creativity from dummy half, 5 metres away from the try line, is so underrated. His kicking game is good. As I mentioned, his defence is great, but his ability now to not only just get his forwards running onto the football, and his ability to drop a forward under to score a try, hitting his forwards and players through holes, he's now doing it to his halves, which is just such skill. I think it's just stuff you can't coach. I think it comes with, I understand players like Cooper Cronk had to work hard to make them look like they had natural ability, when Cooper Cronk actually didn't. He had to work hard at his craft to understand how certain plays had to be done and managed. Wade Egan looks to me as a Cooper Cronk, where he looks like some things he does look easy, but you can tell it's taken a lot of hard work for him to get there. I think he's an incredible dummy half, and I give the Warriors a massive rap for what they've achieved in season 2026 so far. I just hope it doesn't crumble like last year, but to be honest, at the end of the day, they've got more depth this year than I feel like they had last year. For example, when Luke Metcalf went down at Suncorp Stadium against Brisbane back in round 17 and tore his ACL, everyone went, okay, the Wars are done. And I think it was fair to say that, because everything they did came off the back of Luke Metcalf last year. Now we're seeing everything come off everyone in every single position. It is so good to see. Jacob Laban was incredible at back row in this game. It's so good to see them do so well. I give them a massive rap. Alofi Khan Pereira on the wing, he's just having fun, isn't he? Dallin Watene-Zelezniak, he's just doing his thing. It's so good to see the way they are playing. On the Dragons, now, look, I normally skip through the Dragons quickly because I don't want to hammer them any more than what they're getting hammered in the media and on other podcasts and whatnot. And I can understand it. I'm gonna hammer the Dragons here. I'm sorry, Dragons fans. Skip through this if you don't want to listen to it. That was pathetic. That was pathetic. I look at their lineup. It isn't that bad, yeah? Clinton Gutherson isn't a shocking player. He's a player he bases his game on effort. He doesn't have the natural ability, but they've got players like Jaden Sewer, the Couchman brothers, who are outstanding in this game. Hamish Stewart, Dylan Egan, Damien Cook. They have a side there that, Kyle Flanagan, right? He gets a lot of harsh criticism. If you watch Kyle Flanagan's season last year, especially the second half of the season when he was starting in that number 7 jersey, I thought he did a reasonably good job, to be honest with you. They've got some players in there that showed nothing in this game. With the talent and some of the experience that some of these players have in the NRL level, the lack of effort and defense was some of probably the worst lack of effort performance I've seen from a side this year. It was actually really, really hard to watch. And I can understand their fans booing at halftime and at full time because they know that this side has talent, experience, and if you look at the squad at the start of the year, you're not saying it's one of the worst squads on paper, in my opinion. You're just not. Like, look at the Newcastle Knights. For me, they probably had a worse team on paper. Like, I just think they did. Like, they obviously Dylan Brown, Kalen Ponga, they got the superstars. But overall, I thought the Bulldogs probably had a better team. The Dragons probably had a better team on paper. That's just my opinion. But when I'm talking about experience in big games, Damien Cook was the Australian hooker only a few years ago. As I mentioned, Gutherson was a grand finalist fullback only a few years ago. You know, I don't know what's happened. I do not know what's happened to the Dragons. I can't work it out, but they aren't playing like they want to win, and that's the concerning part. They are lacking the attitude, they are lacking the effort, they are lacking the respect for the football and for the jersey. And I feel so bad for Dragons fans. I'm going to skip past them. I'm getting too passionate and emotional about the Dragons. But that was disgraceful. If I'm Dean Young and I see them play like that, I'm scratching my head. I don't know where they go from here. I love what they've done next year. Drinkwater, Metcalf, like they're getting some recruitment coming in. Jacob Little will start at dummy half, you'd assume, next year. So they will be better next year. But, Valentine Holmes isn't being himself. Like they're jersey grabbing. They're not tackling, mate. They're jersey grabbing. It's like under sixes stuff. It's really disappointing to see because I look at Newcastle back in 2015 and 2016. I think back those 2 years, they got back to back wooden spoons. They were, and respectfully, that was like consistently a lot of. I remember Paul Gallen coming out, Cronulla versing the Knights in 2016 and absolutely smashed Newcastle at their home ground. And Gallen said something like it was like, playing against reserve grade which I thought was harsh at the time. But if you looked at the team on paper back then and they played like that, you could understand due to the lack of experience they had in that team at that stage. After the whole Wayne Bennett and Nathan Tinkler debacle for that years, it really did screw them up for a few years there. And I felt sorry for Newcastle then. But since then, I haven't really seen an excuse for a team to perform like this. I look at Valentine Holmes, premiership winner, Damien Cook, grand final 2020-21, only the Australian hooker a few years ago. Valentine Holmes was in the last World Cup for Australia for the Kangaroos. Like, Moses Suli's a great player. I know he didn't play in this game, but, Jaden Sewer, Setu Tu's been decent for them this year. Christian Tuipulotu's not a bad player. They've got the talent there, the experience there. They're just not playing for each other. They're not playing for their fans, and their fans that are turning up every week. It's just disappointing to see. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Manly and the Titans. Overall, it was a scrappy game of football, I think it's fair to say. I was really happy with Manly's completion rate in the first half, considering it was a bit of wet weather football there at Brookie Oval. Look, it was refreshing to see a very low scored game. I think Jalen de Groot for the Gold Coast did really well in the centres. He played a bit of fullback under Desi Hasler whenever Keanu Kinney or AJ Brimson or Jaden Campbell weren't playing there. He played a fair few games there actually back in season 2025, and I think he's a good little athlete, Jalen de Groot. I think he's a good player. He's got this. I think he's a centre. I really do. His ability to offload to his wingers there, to his winger, is fantastic. He's got speed, agility, great footwork. Knowing when to pass the football is an art in itself from such an inexperienced player. I think he's an out and out first grader, Jalen de Groot. I think he's a really, really good player. I'll give credit to him. I thought Mo Fodawaker really stood up in this game. Keanu Kinney got involved as much as he possibly could in this game, which was great to see. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, there was no big Tino out there. Clace Haas had a dig. Josh Patson did all right. They're trying, the Gold Coast. They are trying. And I thought the fact that they, I know Manly fans think, oh, we had no Haumole, no Tolly Kohler, no Tommy Turbo out there. But at the end of the day, The Titans still had no Tino, and the Titans only held Manly out to 12 points at Brookie Oval. So that's a win in itself. So we are seeing improvement from the Gold Coast Titans. Ever since Zane Harrison has come into the side 3 or 4 weeks ago, I sat here and reviewed that Titans game and said the rebuild didn't start in round one, it starts now. And this is what they're doing. They are getting better slowly every week. And I dare say the Titans, if they went on a little bit of a run, winning 3 or 4 games in a row towards the backstage of the year, it wouldn't surprise me at all, because I saw enough in this game to suggest that they are improving under Hane. It's going to take more time, but in saying that, they play with attitude. Look at the two rosters, right? I'd probably say the Dragons had a more experienced, talented roster than the Gold Coast Titans. The Titans have a lot of young players in there, and I thought their effort was outstanding in this game. They really tried hard. AJ Brimson isn't a centre. He's having a dig, but I don't see how they can keep him there long term. Yeah, I think they're better off letting him go. As good as he is, I think Keanu Kinney is their priority. They've re-signed him on a long term deal. So yeah, look, Titans, I'm going to give them a massive rap here. Even though they didn't win, I thought they did really, really well in this game. Jaden Campbell, man, he's strong, isn't he? Some of his defensive plays, man, some of the big boys he could hit too. He was fantastic, defensively very strong. His game is going to another level. For me, as I spoke a couple of weeks ago on the Gold Coast Titans and Jaden Campbell, for me, he's a lot like his old man. He's either a 5'8", like Preston was back at the Penrith Panthers back in that 2003 premiership winning side, or he's either a fullback, where he did play a bit of there at Cronulla as well, and of course at the Gold Coast Titans from 2007 onwards. So the Manly Sea Eagles, congratulations to Manly under Fosball. Look, it was an ugly win, I think it's fair to say, but they got the win. And Kieran Foran, Fosball, he said at the end of the game on Fox League, he said something along the lines of that was his most pleasing win so far since he's been the interim coach of the club, because of the players that weren't there. No Tom, no Tolukola, no Haumole Olakawatu. The most pleasing thing I'm really proud of Manly is the way in which they're gelling, they're combining. They look happy. They're playing for their coach. They're playing for each other. They're playing for the fans, and they're playing with that Manly DNA, which they lacked at the start of the year. And if you watched my podcast back at the start of the year, boy, oh boy, didn't I crucify the Sea Eagles, saying this isn't the team I know. I know they're so much better than this. I got quite passionate, actually, it's fair to say, but I'm so proud of what they've achieved. Do I have them as a true premiership winning threat at the moment? That's a really hard question to answer. I don't know why I asked it now that I think about it, because it's really hard. Like, I love what I'm seeing from them. My question about Manly is, have they got what it takes to get to the next level? I think they do, but I'd probably have, you know, I'd probably have Penrith, the Warriors, the Roosters up there. And look, I know Manly fans won't like hearing this. I'm going to say I think probably Brisbane up there too, of teams that know how to elevate to that next level. If Manly make the finals this year, which I hope they do, it's looking like they may at the moment, touch wood, then I think they will learn a lot more in this final series than they will in the previous ones, because they know who their coach is will be long term, who's about to get announced in the next week or two. So I love what they've done. Everything at the club, it just feels like Manly again. It's been a long, long time since, as a Manly fan, that it's felt like Manly again. And it's great to see them do well, because they're winning games based on mental toughness and with that Manly DNA, which I love to see. So, look, it was refreshing to watch this game. 12-10 wasn't the most exciting game of football considering how close the scoreline was, but, congratulations to them. The Cowboys, 30 points to South Sydney, 18. Telanoa Penatani making his debut on the wing for South Sydney. He was fantastic in his game, wasn't he? He was just, I didn't realise how good he was. He played in the preseason challenge, and, we've seen a bit of him, but at the end of the day, he was fantastic. Like, if South Sydney can't keep him, there will be clubs jumping to sign him. I mean, for a debut game, scoring that try was great to see. Yeah, I don't know. I was really happy for him. South Sydney, at the end of the day, that they're lacking discipline though. Yeah, I think I never thought I'd say this, but David Fafita, I think, is becoming a bit of a loss for South Sydney. I just think they're missing his impact. I thought he started the season reasonably well. He certainly wasn't one of their better players, and in no means, but I just think he added a bit of X factor, a bit of aggression when they needed it, and I think he got himself involved a lot more than he did at the Gold Coast Titans under Bennett. So South Sydney look disappointing in this game, but. It's a game that I think their fans probably expected them to win. I understand Latrell Mitchell was out, Jack Whiten was out. They still had injuries. I understand that, but I still think they had enough talent, experience, and leadership in the team to get the job done. If there was going to be an upset in this game, it was most likely probably going to come from this game. But I'll give the Cowboys massive credit. I'll jump over the Cowboys quickly because we've got almost 50 minutes of this podcast, and I said it's going to be a shorter one, but it's ended up being a lot like the others. I do talk a lot about the games. I apologise, but the Cowboys. 30 points. Congratulations to them. Consistency. They're a bit like Manly. Can you have them in the grand final at the moment? You probably have other sides a little bit ahead of them at the moment, but they're certainly in the conversation. They're showing consistency. They're showing a lot of character, a lot of strength of character for a football side. They're a team that's playing for their coach. To think that Todd Payten was almost sacked, they had to do a review last year. And one thing I love about the Cowboys is they don't sack their coach easily like other coaches. They give their coaches other clubs. They give their coaches every opportunity to prove themselves, and they always give their coaches another year, another chance to give them that opportunity. And gee whiz, they're certainly the club, the board, the players would be very happy that they gave Todd Payten another opportunity to show what they can do. I think Todd Payten is a very good football coach. I think it says a lot about a coach that is under pressure to turn the side's form around. It means he can deal with criticism. It means he can deal with daily criticism, which wouldn't be easy for a coach to take. He can deal with the off-field dramas. I think he looks like a coach that genuinely doesn't give a shit what anyone thinks, and he has the club's best interest at heart. I love what Jake Clifford has done in this game. His kicking game is outstanding. I was sitting here back in January, I think it was, and I spoke about how good of a player and underrated of a player Jake Clifford is. I spoke about his kicking game and how they need to pick him at 5'8". And I actually think since he's gone to halfback, his game's gone to another level. I think without Dearden, it's brought the best out of Clifford. As good as he was with Dearden in the side, his game's elevated, gone to another level. And if I remember back in season 2022, for the halves for Newcastle at the first half of that year, I believe it was 6 Jake Clifford, 7 Adam Clune. And they were carving up as a halves combination for the Newcastle Knights. And a lot of the wins came off the back of the kicking game from Jake Clifford. His long kicks, his short kicks. He's got this beautiful Harbour Bridge pass that always comes off, and that 2-point field goal just before half time, he just did that easily. It was fantastic to watch. I'm really happy for the Cowboys. Jake Clifford, congratulations to him. It was just great to see. Reid Marnie was outstanding in this game. His kicking game, outstanding. That great try from Reid Marnie as well was awesome. He just ran up like a front rower to put the ball over the line. It was fantastic to see. Congratulations to the Cowboys. Scott Drinkwater. He was a bit slow at the start of the year. He really struggled in that game in Vegas. And for about 2 or 3 weeks after that, he was really quiet, copped a lot of criticism. Over the rugby league media for the way he was performing. And I think when the Cowboys wouldn't re-sign him, I think that rattled him a bit. I think he wanted to stay there. I think he's a Cowboy at heart. I think he really wanted to stay there. He cares about the club, and he was rattled there for a couple of weeks. But then I think since he's got his head around it, it's given him clarity to move forward and understand what his future is. He's become a player that the Cowboys needed him to be, which was the usual Scott Drinkwater that we see. Defensively, I feel like his game has improved as well. But most importantly, his game in attack is very underrated. I know he gets spoken about a lot, but some of the stuff he does, his try assists, his passing game, his passing selection, his kicking game, he's a really good player. He really, really is. I mean, I wouldn't have him in the elite fullbacks such as Tedesco, Kalen Ponga, Tom Trbojevic, but I'd have him in that second division of, you probably have your Jareen Bullers, your Scott Drinkwaters, that will most likely be the new elite fullbacks in the next couple of years. So I give him massive credit, and I'm as a Dragons, if I'm a Dragons fan, as a guy that want to desperately see the Dragons do well, I'm actually really seriously happy that he's going to the Dragons. I would have liked to see him stay at the Cowboys, but in saying that, Jackson Purdue is going to be the new fullback there long term. It looks like. Tamalolo has been fantastic for them. Helam Lukey, that was a great try, wasn't it? Where he just caught the ball, barged into the defender, reached over the try line. They're just on another level at the Cowboys, and they're playing just freestyle football. They're just throwing the ball if they see an opportunity. They're taking risks, and they're taking risks that a lot of other clubs and other teams aren't taking at the moment. It's paying off, and with the speed of the game, the fatigue in the middle of the ruck from the defending sides, they are very good at realizing and diagnosing fatigue from the opposition, if that makes sense. They are very much good. And this is what Reid Marnie has brought to the Cowboys, that when he's at dummy half, watch his game really closely, he will identify those front rowers in front of him and that lock forward and the back rowers. He will identify consistently every set, especially in the second half when they are really fucked, when the opposition are fucked fatigue-wise, 20 minutes to go. Reid Marnie, you see him look at the opposition more and they're in the defensive line than he does at his own players and picking up the football. So he's so good at identifying that. So Reid Marnie doesn't just bring the creativity from dummy half, he brings that experience and that skill of identifying players that are fatigued, which is a real art in itself, I believe. So congratulations to the Cowboys. 30 points to 18 over South Sydney. That is the Rugby League Forecast podcast review show for round 12. Please, if you love what you're hearing, if you love what you're listening to, please follow me on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And if you do watch me on YouTube, please subscribe. Just click the subscribe if you're on your app or you're watching on your laptop or whatnot, or on your TV, Apple TV or whatever it is. Please hit subscribe. I'm a Manly diehard fan, but I think it's fair to say I'm fair. I probably talk about other clubs than I do Manly. I probably didn't speak about Manly much at all today, to be honest with you. But I just want to see the clubs struggling do better as a rugby league fan. I'm a Manly diehard, but I'm also a rugby league fan. I want to see those clubs struggling, especially the Dragons. I get passionate about them because I want to see them do well. So thank you very much for listening. That is the review show for round 12.